The Clinton lawyer, Charles. He's driving a Lincoln.
That's right, and stinking.
He's stinking in the Lincoln. Absolutely. Now, Charles, is it just me, or are the same people who think that an attack on the CIA installation in Benghazi is YouTube trolling, now think that sending a fake bomb to the fake news is an act of terror?
It's crazy. What was that show, Girls Gone Wild?
Right.
Liberals Gone Wild. I mean, this is such a, I mean, first of all, people on the right in the main, and obviously I don't speak for anybody, but just observing Tea Party rallies as I've done, and observing and comparing, the uncivil behavior of Hillary Clinton and her ilk during the Kavanaugh hearings with what you witness when you go to a typical, or watch a typical Trump rally. Highly doubtful in my mind that these alleged mailings, which were not even mailings, we learned so far,
oh, really?
In multiple cities simultaneously, many with the same, I believe, supposed return address, principally to Democrats.
Who puts a return address on a bomb?
Yeah, exactly. I think it was very good of the Trump White House immediately, and of Trump himself, to condemn these acts and to say that we're going to get to the bottom of them. But very fishy when Hillary Clinton is the first person to comment on all this, and there's a lot of very fishy aspects to this so far.
Yeah, it's just ridiculous. And then they got powder, they got fake bombs.
Right.
That press conference, they were referring to him when they spoke about the suspect, like they've already got something in mind.
Exactly. Well, if you remember back to the Oklahoma City bombing, I think it was Janet Reno, I may have that wrong, but they immediately said it was right-wing extremists.
Right.
Same thing with the shooter in D.C. under Clinton. Right-wing extremists, and just let's wait and see what's really going on here. It's a horrible set of incidents. I expect maybe this time under Trump that our FBI and our various investigative bodies will actually get this sorted out very, very quickly, because we do have this election coming up on the 6th, where a lot of people will be out and about at public places, and it will be important to be very vigilant.
And don't get hit by a fake bomb.
Exactly, with two wires instead of one. All these people already pointing out inconsistencies with the reporting.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised.
So the art department, again, I don't know if you could raise them again, but raise them up high, because this is really, really something. And
well, thank you.
It fits in very well. This was a film involving Matthew McConaughey. I forget if the Lincoln lawyer was a sympathetic person or not, but Bob Mueller is certainly not a sympathetic creature.
Well, that's why we've changed the license plate here.
Exactly.
From not guilty to guilty.
Exactly.
It's Mueller. He's guilty of all manner of wrongdoing.
Exactly.
So there seems to be some ongoing issue with my streaming provider. We're live here on YouTube, but some of our other platforms have been taken out.
That's not good.
No, it's not. But don't worry about it. We're good on YouTube. I'll take care of all the other ones later, and I've adjusted so that our generous sponsors on patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth are getting the feed from YouTube. There was some speculation during last night's episode of More Pain that we were having some deep state interference, but I like to try to not jump to that conclusion unless we have actual forensic evidence. There was a dramatic decrease in the speed of the internet performance here, which was definitely strange, but it seems that the problems directly related to the live streams are coming from the service provider that handles the streaming. And the speed is back up, so that's no problem. But that's all right. We will press on irrespective of these technical matters, Charles.
Good. Well, maybe what we should do is go to the first page.
Yes.
The title page, as we like to do. And there's been a lot of criticism of Robert Mueller, but it's been, I would say, muted. And I think that the people who are writing books, whether it's Greg Jarrett or Dan Bongino and all these other people saying, the special counsel, Tom Fitton saying the special counsel should be shut down. I mean, at this stage, we're now talking how many months into this? 18 months, 19 months into this process, May 2017 to the present. And when you really look at the context, as we're going to do in this show, and you look back over Mueller's long career, basically is, I think, somebody protecting the Clintons.
Right.
It as a history teacher used to say, taxes the credulity of modern man, I always say. But, you're trying to figure out, you argue as Rod Rosenstein because your boss manages to recuse himself, never having told anybody in the interview process that if this came up, I'd have to recuse myself, right? So Rosenstein decides somehow that he has to appoint a special counsel, even though Crossfire Hurricane initially started under Comey's watch, July 31st, 2016, has been at it hard, supposedly, from July 31st, 2016. You've got teams of people looking into this. There should be lots of notes, there should be lots of records, there should be lots of things happening. We don't yet know how much money was spent on it, who staffed it, what they were looking at. We haven't had any kind of document dumps coming out of the FBI vault, which would help us understand exactly who the personalities were. Magically, between the time that Comey is unceremoniously fired and May 17th, 2017, this bright bulb, Rat Rosenstein says, he says, you know what? Of all the lawyers in the world, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to pick a guy who's obviously conflicted, as we'll explain why, to head up this special counsel operation, which arguably we don't even really need to do, because it's not as if Comey himself was running Crossfire Hurricane. There was a team, I wonder who was on it, but there were various and sundry people on the team. The fact that Comey is fired shouldn't mean that whatever work was done, if it was appropriate, couldn't have been carried out under the acting FBI director and then under the replacement. But of course, you get Mueller time. I like that. You should change that one too.
Oh yeah, you should have. I missed the one on the bottom.
Yeah.
But sometimes, Charles, when you've got the time, he's got the beer.
That's right.
It's time to convict somebody. He doesn't care if they've done a crime or not. If you've got the crime, he's got the beer.
Exactly right. Well, so the thing here, I mean, we've been saying that we've been really of one voice, you and I, going to the very beginning of this, that I don't think there's anybody, any sensible person who cares about U.S. politics, is an observer, who wouldn't agree that if foreign actors are meddling around in elections, before, during, and after elections, that's a very bad thing. And it's a bad thing when foreign actors do it to us, and it's a bad thing when U.S. actors do it in foreign countries.
You're not talking about Gerard Depardieu, are
No,
you?
no, no. I'm talking about, I wish I were only talking about him. He had the interesting, he made the interesting decision to leave France and move to Russia. I actually wrote an article about that.
Wow.
Because among other reasons, he claimed that the income tax system was a lot better in Russia than it is in France.
Got to ask Bill Browder about that.
Exactly. But today is all about why I, in particular, believe that Mueller, and his team, his partisan team of witch hunters, cannot credibly actually succeed in mounting a fair-minded investigation that exposes what narrowly may have happened in the 2015-2016 cycle. But to understand that, you have to understand the longer history. In prior elections, I would argue going certainly as far back as 2010, and arguably maybe even further back than that. So Robert Mueller is the wrong man, the wrong person in this job. I would, who knows what's going to come next by way of indictments and convictions and things, but so far, it's been an underwhelming production with a lot of people spending a lot of time casting a cloud over this administration. And I want to understand, I want to go just the very first principles. I want to see, and I think the American people deserve to see, the actual deliberation that resulted in picking Robert Mueller. I mean, why is he the only person in the world you could have picked for this job? And who else did they consider?
Well, but didn't they also say they were going to declassify this FISA thing that was used to do the survey? I mean, what happened with all that? And then, also, Rat Rodenstein was supposed to go to talk to a closed-door committee, and they canceled it today.
Yeah, there's something extremely odd here. What they're saying, the official story on that is that two foreign nations, people are saying it's, Judge Napolitano says it's Israel and the UK, and that would make
Right.
sense to me, have both said, look, we really don't think this is a good idea. Can you slow that down a little bit, Mr. President? And, you know, that's interesting that Israel and the United Kingdom would be concerned about the revelations that might come out here. But on the other hand, you know, thank you very much. You know, the food sucks in England, and I can't speak about Israel, but never been there yet. I'd like to go there, but
I don't know that Israel's known for its cuisine.
I think so. I've heard the Mediterranean cuisine's pretty good.
Maybe, but kosher food is not my favorite thing. But so, Charles, I'm just bringing up this graphic because apparently Rosenstein is not done. Needs a little more time on the grill.
He does. He does. Yeah, that's a. Yeah, I don't think I'll be eating very many hot dogs with heads on them. That doesn't seem very appetizing. Have to cut the head off and then. But as this Mueller investigation winds down, I think at the same time, a series of freight trains is rushing towards the November 15th, 2018 final deadline that the Clinton Foundation and its many calendar year filers have to complete federal, state, and foreign tax returns on a truthful basis. So I think there's, we're watching, let's wait and see what Mueller comes up with. Exactly. You know, call up that orange and black pantsuit store, get some of them ready.
Why would she go out of the house wearing something orange?
I don't know. I don't know.
She just, all she needs to do is stand against a blue screen here, and then we have memes for days.
I know. It's just some people get to a point where, you know, they won't listen to anybody, and I think Hillary reached that point, and Bill and Chelsea many, many decades ago.
Actually, Charles, you know, yesterday Larry Nichols quite confidently said that he felt like all the things that are happening now indicate that Hillary will run in 2020, that she's doing what he called clearing the road.
Yeah. Well, we'll see about that. I mean,
He didn't say she would win. He just said she was going to run.
Yeah, it's you can't run from prison. I mean, in this country.
Right, I was going to say. I think someone in Brazil did that.
Exactly, or it might even be doing it. Yeah, again.
Nice.
So, without any further ado, maybe we can jump into the second page.
Yes.
And here, I know both you and I think, on Twitter have been, I don't know if we're shadow banned still, but the viewer count is not going up for me.
No.
In fact, it went down a small fraction. You can reach both of us, of course, at our respective Twitter handles there, and you can reach me at my website. And you can figure out how to contact me via email by just Googling that site with contact, and you'll get to a landing page for that. A number of people have asked me why I haven't posted anything on this site since September 6th or 7th, I think, 2016. And part of the reason for that was that I didn't, well, we have this alternative way of doing things now, but the other reason is that I really did not trust the FBI under Obama, and certainly will never trust the Clintons. So I felt that it wasn't such a great idea to be telegraphing via my site the actual details of the work that I have been doing ever since then, and I have a tremendous amount of work done. That said, once we get past this November 15th, 2018 deadline, and once a few things break the way I hope they will break, that's going to change. We're going to see a return to production on the website. Meanwhile, I do use Twitter a lot. I try to use it a lot. Jason and I have been very, very busy in recent months, particularly as these investigations have been taking root. So I'm not tweeting quite as much as I used to, but
You're still pretty active on the Twitter.
Exactly.
But you always, the thing that I find nice about your Twitter feed, Charles, is that you drill down to the important stuff. People who are on the conservative side of things, who want to cut through the BS, as it were, and just go right to @Charles Ortel, and it's sort of a customized news feed for people who want to see that. Now, it's interesting to note, each time we do a show, you're hovering between 32.2 and 32.3 basically, and I'm hovering between 24.3 and 24.2. My highest was 24.6, but then Twitter sort of put the clamp down on me. I don't know if that's organic, if I've reached a saturation point.
But yours is more impressive because you've been on Twitter a very short time, and I've been on since 2009. So,
well, that's what I mean. That's the strange part, is that I haven't substantially changed anything about my tweeting activity, and platforms like Patreon have been growing nicely. So I think there's still interest in what we're talking about. We did discover, I haven't done anything online about this yet, but I did discover from watching a video about it, this entire section that is deeply buried within the bowels of Twitter, where you have to enter your password again to access this information, and it gives you all of these sort of fairly, in some cases, esoteric categories that are checked off, that it's unclear what they're doing with this. If that, like Donald Trump, conservative politics, Donald Trump supporters, all that stuff was checked off for me, and I have a feeling they might use that to say, that guy, that's the guy.
right, exactly.
Stop him.
Yeah, that could be. And of course, Twitter is a publicly traded company, but it's a private concern.
What does that mean?
Publicly traded just means you can.
No, but I mean public but private.
Well, it's publicly traded shares, but it's a for-profit corporation. So, you know, they can, within reason, they have to comply with laws, but they do what they want. And when you when you subscribe to Twitter, you are signing an agreement with them, and you got to check and see what it says and how it gets updated.
End user license agreement, very probably.
Right.
I'm troubled by the ownership in Twitter. Saudi investors, particularly Al Walid bin Talal. We've seen a lot of indicators. The shooting in Vegas happened right there in a hotel owned by Al Walid bin Talal. There was a question of 32nd floor versus somebody, I believe it was HDR FX Cornwall, did a photogrammetric recreation of Las Vegas based on all the photos, and he said the 32nd floor does not line up. It would have been the 34th or the 36th, which puts it right into the Four Seasons owned by Al Walid bin Talal. So many things. And then a palace attack in Jeddah 6 days later, another gun attack on a royal property in Saudi Arabia since then. The Purge, where they hung all those guys upside down, that was the best part of it.
Yeah, that was good.
And then now all this stuff with Khashoggi. It seems like we're peering through a keyhole at these warring factions within the Saudi royal family, and their war is kind of spilling out into the streets. And it's like when the Sopranos get into a fight and some person who just happens to be at the Bada Bing Club gets shot.
Right. Yeah. But congratulations to you nonetheless in getting your Twitter following to that level in 2 scant years. So our regular viewers will know that we're trying to do something here that's different. We're not simply, well, we are, I suppose, 2 guys in a room just talking, but we're trying to motivate people to go out and do what so many of you, and thank you for it, have done, that is to contact your representatives in the House and the Senate, the attorneys general, and the different regulators. Many of you have done that, and that's beginning, I think, to bear some fruit here. And so what we try to do is we take, with each presentation, we're giving you a fresh look at some facts and figures. We try to do that by providing links to the underlying source material so that you can check this stuff for yourself, learn about it for yourself. And this does mark the 114th broadcast. It's amazing. Average about 2 hours each. And that means that if you wanted to take a nice 10-day vacation where you didn't sleep, you could spend the entire 10-day period watching, the 114 shows. That would probably work out to, well, that would be sleep deprivations if you did that for 10 days. So you'd probably have to do it over 20 or 30 days. But if we hit that playlist,
yes,
Jason has done a great job getting all these many fine titles up in one place, and you can go back through them in most recent well, you could, I think, do it whichever way you want to do it, but it's set up to go.
Yeah, we've got it in chronology here from the most recent to the first, and it's all of the episodes of Charles Ortel is Closing In, as well as Sunday with Charles, and a couple of our little comedic interludes. We haven't done any comedic interludes in a little while. Soon, I think we'll have to come up with some, maybe for the holidays. The holidays are coming.
What, Halloween?
Well, Halloween, I think people enjoy seeing you in ridiculous costumes, but also, I know you love Columbus Day.
Yeah, that's passed. That's already passed.
Did it pass? Oh, yeah, the other day. Well, sorry.
We got Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving, Christmas, all that stuff.
But this is really, it's turned into kind of a formula, and when you look at it all in one fell swoop, I mean, it's quite a lot of output.
This is the oeuvre of Charles Ortel.
And Jason Goodman. The
but
collaboration.
It is a lot of content. I mean, joking aside, I think that it may, in fact, be the most comprehensive repository of evidence with regard to the Clinton Foundation.
And related frauds.
Yeah.
And another note to the audience, to date, what we've been trying to do is inform prosecutors, make it easier for them to get to the place where we've been for so many months. And that's why we've been pitching this not to a general audience. That's why we get into details. And I'm hopeful that now that we're very close to these midterm elections, and now that it looks as if the pundits are going to be embarrassed again, once we get through them, assuming that there's a positive result in that, by positive I mean that the disruption that Trump is doing to the swamp with his allies, that it can continue, and that he can continue with his allies the impressive accomplishments in the economy, foreign policy, and otherwise. Once that's clear, then you have a 2-year runway to the presidential election, during which you can really take out the swamp. People are going to yell and scream when the swamp gets hit as hard as it's going to get hit, but it's going to get hit. A can of massive whoop-ass has been opened on the swamp already.
Damn, I wish I had a graphic. If I had known you were going to say that. We need an image of you opening a can of whoop-ass. Charles, there was some person, was it Joe Scarborough, who said that Trump is going to cash out and not even run for a second term or something like that?
Again, I love that. What's the movie with the Harlem Barbershop at Eddie Murphy?
Oh yeah, Trading Places.
Trading Places. I love those type of places. I love going to breakfast places, where not the fancy ones, but in the rural area, whatever,
Some
people
kind
go
of diner
regular.
where two old guys arguing.
Where they tend to be there every morning at whatever the normal time is, 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, and they'll sit down, they'll wolf down a breakfast of 2,000 calorie breakfast, and then spend 2 hours solving the problems of the world. And that's basically Joe Scarborough. I mean, the problems he hasn't succeeded in creating again, he just talks on that show so arrogantly. It's as if he has, and his guests have, the solution. Anybody who would dare even potentially think about disagreeing with him is an idiotic rube, and globalism is the way. I mean, it's very tough to watch that show. And then there's the issue, of course, of the unsolved.
Anytime he tweets something stupid, I just put up this and I say, hey, what happened to Lori Klasutis, the intern who disappeared in your office? And that seems to have not really been answered.
Right. You haven't gotten any answers to that yet?
He hasn't responded.
He hasn't?
He hasn't blocked me. I think he just ignores it.
Care,
He's probably getting a lot of. Yeah, I mean, he got away with that, so.
But, that show, under Obama, that show had, I think, a pretty good audience because Mika was very friendly, I believe, with Valerie Jarrett.
Yeah, she's the daughter of Zbigniew Brzezinski, biggest globalist, corrupt.
He's still dead, I believe, and he was mostly wrong his entire life. But
I wonder how many of these guys say, oh, time for me to disappear. I'm old enough to fake my death and nobody will question it.
No, I think he's...
You can go play golf with John McCain underground in Brazil.
No, I don't think that happened. I don't see John McCain as a golfer. Or as Biggie. So
I could see John McCain cursing up the storm on the golf course. Like, those guys who miss a shot, they just scream at you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, anyway, so if we go into we'll review the news of the day before we get into this latest stuff on the Clinton Foundation. This story, there's a certain amount of, I hate bringing up the Times, but if we hit that link, and I don't know if it'll come up, this is a story written by a guy who's now at Bloomberg, featuring me, saying that GE was in trouble March 7th, 2009. Now, GE got to its lowest stock price right around then. It was like 666 or something like that.
What?
Yeah, it really it was about. And today, GE is under tremendous pressure again. And while I was watching it for a while, it was only down about 0.5%, then 1%, then 2%. Then at 3:30, it was down 3%. And I think it closed down 4%. And the reason...
Yeah, 4.1% down.
That's a big move. And what people are worried about with GE is the problem that I laid out really in 2007, 8, and it took Nocera until 2009 to write about it. But to be fair, he did a very good job, and he's a great writer. He's now, I think, writing Bloomberg Opinion. But the problems that I identified, the structural problems with GE, that it basically was there's a crappy bank trying to compete with sharks in the financial services industry, and an overstretched conglomerate with too many managers and too much overhead and no clear path. Well, after a lot of restructuring and acquisitions and downsides and management change and all this kind of stuff, we're back in the same place that we were with GE back in 2007, 8, 9, wondering, can GE afford its dividend? And when I saw this actually for the first time back in 2007, I was much more concerned, and I remain more concerned about the global economy writ large than I am just about GE. Because if GE, with all of its supposed assets in terms of market position and the benefit of the doubt they got for being GE, if they can't make a go of the global economy, then what shot does any other diversified company have of doing this? And I'm against diversified companies, generally speaking, because I think individual investors can do a better job of putting together a portfolio of pure plays than some management team is going to do when their real goal is to make sure that they get paid as much as possible and have a cushy retirement package. So I bring this up not so much to tout me, but merely to say, here we are, it's almost 10 years later, and we're in the same damn place, yet our government debt is double, thanks to Obama, what it was when he first took office. It's up $10 trillion. Household debt is high, corporate debt is high, state and local debt is high. Incomes, they're beginning to rise, but debt has gone up a lot faster than income. And so we're in a dangerous moment here for the world economy, for the US economy, and that's why I thought I'd bring this back up.
And do I interpret your financial analysis of a diversified company in the dumb guy speak of GE should stick to light bulbs, and the more they get into banking and doing loans and all this other stuff, it's like way off the tracks? Well,
it's more that when you get to somebody and you find somebody who's an expert in what they do, because they wake up take Michael Jordan in basketball when he was just playing basketball.
Very good at basketball.
He's pretty damn good at basketball.
Yeah.
And he's actually a great inspirational speaker as well, because he talks a lot about, people say, well, he scored so many points. And he brings up the reason he scored so many points is that he missed so many other baskets. That you don't score points unless you try.
Right.
And I think the problem with a lot of business people that I've observed is, the people who make a lot of money in business sell stuff at a profit. I mean, it's a very important thing. You're not doing strategic plans, you're not doing numbers, you're actually going out and you're convincing a skeptical customer to buy a product or a service again and again and again on a basis where you actually make money.
Right.
That's the essence of business. It's not going to conferences, it's not going to Harvard Business School, it's not being a, quote, manager, riding on jets, etc. It's oftentimes not traveling. I mean, there are people, some of the legendary financiers going way back, and I'm very sympathetic to that myself, would, a manager would come along and say, well, I got this business in Ohio, I want you to come out and see my factory and do this, that, and the other thing. And these bankers would say, why would I do that? I'm going to learn absolutely nothing from visiting your factory. But on the other hand, if you show me your business plan, your financial results, and we have a discussion in my office, I'll be able to tell you within about half an hour whether I think your company is a good company or a bad company, and I'll take it as written or read that your plant is nice, and if it should be dirty, it's dirty, or if it should be clean, it's clean, or whatever, and you've got the right machinery. That's not a call that many investors make well. And so when you think about this era, we've been talking about the 1988 to present era when unregulated globalism has been sold as the magic elixir, that's going to make everybody wealthy. Really, that's just the music for the 13 BlackBerry crowd that wants to fly around the world, going from
13 BlackBerry.
There are a number of people who've got in trouble, like Rajat Gupta, McKinsey, and others.
Had 13 BlackBerries?
Yeah, 13 BlackBerries.
Why 13?
I have no clue, because you get one from one directorship and one for this.
There's something to that.
Is there really?
Well, the BlackBerries, first of all, John McCain apparently invented the BlackBerry.
Is there?
Well, that was a quote from one of his assistants, but he was involved somehow in legislation that allowed Research in Motion, the Canadian company, to do something that it needed to do to make the BlackBerry. And then the BlackBerry very early on, I think, was used to replace this like cipher that they had that was like the size of a typewriter, so it went down, because it was really the first widely used smartphone kind of platform where you could have programs.
Yeah, I had one. I had one, not 13.
Not 13. And Imran Awan, of course, was famous for hacking them. So there was some speculation that people who had, and Hillary was very adamant about getting a particular model of BlackBerry. I don't know if that's because she liked the keyboard, or sometimes when these devices get upgraded from one generation to the next, maybe you can't run a particular operating system on the newer one, and if you've got some like hacked software that's not updated every time, it's like, we need this one. Yeah. Get it from eBay.
Right. but what I was, back on GE for a second, what I was saying is when you have these people who get in the business of and I did a certain amount of this when I was in investing, when you're constantly on airplanes, constantly flying around the planet, constantly overscheduled, constantly doing too much at once, you can fool yourself into thinking that your daily work and all the hours you spend is progress, when in fact what you're doing is you're just drilling a deeper hole for your company, which is what I think GE has been doing here. And I would look, actually, they have a big meeting coming October 30th. If this new CEO does not announce a gigantic downsizing of the corporate staff and the middle level management people, if he doesn't get the debts under control, the assets marked fairly, if he doesn't cut the dividend, that thing is in for a very dangerous ride down.
Well, I just noticed this. I didn't realize that October 1st, Lawrence Culp, they have weird names, this guy's culpable.
Right, exactly.
Right here. But as I look at this, founded in 1892, GE in many ways reminds me of Kodak, in that it's one of these like old school technology brands that's kind of maybe outlived. It's big because it's old. And Kodak went in the toilet. GE might be next.
Could very well be. And it used to be the theory, I remember back 40 years ago when I started in business school, the theory was that companies like GE that were diversified could weather the storms that might occur in a particular industry or portion of the world because they were spread around. So if you had a trouble selling your suntan lotion, you could sell an umbrella, that kind of argument. And because they'd been around for so long and had patented products, and there was this theory that it was tough to keep talent, so you had an assembled workforce, and that was valuable. All of these theories just don't cut it in 2018. And then when you start taking a very close look at what it is indeed that GE and the other companies that are struggling have been doing, overpaying for acquisitions, buying back their stock instead of funding their pension plan for their retired employees, instead of paying off their liabilities the way they might. You've got these precarious balance sheets. A lot of companies like GE that, if you didn't tell me, if I were to put a slide together and not tell you the name of the company and show you the finances of GE, you'd be like, I'm not putting any money. This isn't even as good as dog shit. I mean, this stinks. I mean, this is rancid vomit in the financial statement. I mean, they've got.
Dog shit was up 2% earlier today.
I'm not bringing up Bitcoin. But anyway, so the GE thing is a very sobering thing. We ought to take it seriously. And the people, I've enjoyed many times I've been on Bloomberg and Fox Business and CNBC, but I stopped watching business TV a while ago because it's all this same formula of, what's the earning announcement going to be? Is it a beat? Is it a miss? How does this affect consensus? It's just this formulaic way of thinking about the last 24 hours in the next week or month. And with all of the chatter and all the business books, all the Dare to Be Great books, all the wise billionaires who are always on these shows, tell me why no one has been able to fix GE. Explain that.
Too busy reading My Pet Goat.
Exactly. And then this guy, I mean, this next one here, this is, meet George, one of George Soros' sons.
Oh my.
And he is immediately, look at this guy's eyeglasses.
Oops. What is this?
That just hit exit out. Look at this guy's eyeglasses.
Yeah, for a minute I thought he was in virtual reality there. What's he doing with these?
And you know, this scruffy look, you know, it's just absurd dressing like that when you're the son of a billionaire. You're probably a billionaire yourself. And immediately this guy comes out and he's saying that, you know, that it's, what is it, Trump and the demonization of opponents is responsible for these bomb packages. This came out at 1:14 today, okay? And it's gotten a lot of, 7.2 thousand shares is a lot of shares.
You know, this just reeks of, you know, they planned to have some patsy send these bombs around so they could get sympathy, and then no matter what Trump says, they've got some stupid comment. This is exactly the way the people that are moving against me work.
Right.
Come up with some stupid story, and then whatever way you handle it, they have a disparaging smear campaign ready to go.
Right. And, you know, I mean, note to George, you know, buy your son a razor. Because this is this thing, this scruffy look that I keep talking about. It just it doesn't look good.
The thing that stands out to me most about his look is, forget about the glasses, forget about the shape, the eyes. The eyes, they say, are the window to the soul. And even though we're just looking at a picture of this guy, not his actual eyes, I think he is born from an evil man, and we're looking at the heritage of evil.
Could be.
Who's paying all those people in the caravan?
It's not much. You know, it's not much money they're getting paid either.
Well, but there's thousands of them.
I know, but I mean, for somebody like, you know, the Soros people that have these pockets and all these foundations around the world, nobody's checking it. So tonight I'm going to go on, if we hit that one, the third one, I'm going to be on with my good friend, and I admire him greatly, John Batchelor and Gordon Chang, talking about China. And we've been bringing this up for a while on your show, Jason, and these shows, that the largest bubble ever inflated is popping in China. And when you hear these, when you go back over, let's say, the last 3 years of big company annual reports, you'll see most of them talking about, it used to be, they call it Chindia, China and India. But everyone was hitching their growth prospects on the back of Chinese changes, either consumers changing their pattern of behavior, consuming more in China, and or economic liberalization in China. But now suddenly, out of Volkswagen, which has had some problems complying with laws lying about everything that they do, but they had a horrible result today, and their shares were way down. And we're getting confirming news out of China that the Chinese growth story is done. And really, going back to basic principles in business, if you have a state, the Chinese government, that is prepared to lend businesses far more money than they should actually have and not chastise you when you can't pay it back, and you encourage those businesses as a state to believe they're going to dominate a global market eventually after they lose money in the first several years. That strategy was tried by Japan in the 60s through the 80s, and it spectacularly failed.
In the 90s, right?
Failed, January 1st, 1990 is when it started failing. I mean, their index is called the Nikkei, is their number one. That used to be at like 40,000, December 30th, 1989, around there. And I think it might be 15, 16, 17 right now, almost 30 years later.
Wow. Right.
And the yen was strong. I don't know what about the strength then and now, but that is basically a lost generation in Japan. And I think in China...
what do you mean a lost generation?
Well, 30 years of economic stagnation. The average generation is about 30 years typically.
Oh, so they've been... I got it.
Yeah. So I think this Chinese bust story is starting to play out. That's what we're going to be talking tonight about on John Batchelor, 10:20 tonight, briefly for about 10 minutes.
How do people get to that John Batchelor broadcast?
It's WABC Radio,
There you
and it's whatever station. It depends where you're located in around the United States. But I believe it's still the #1 evening show, and it's an honor to be on that show. There are quite a few. There's an eclectic bunch of people on the show, and John has been at this since right before September 11th, 2001.
Oh.
He got on sort of by accident. A guest who was a friend was hosting the show, and the way John tells the story, somebody canceled, and so John was asked if he would appear in the guy's place, and the host asked John, what do you think is the biggest threat facing the world right now? And John Batchelor said, well, I think terrorists are going to hit. I don't know if he said the World Trade Center or Manhattan. And he said that like several days before September 11th, 2001, and basically ever since then he's been on the air.
Wow. Well, it looks like you can listen to it by going to wabcradio.com/John Batchelor.
Yeah, he's a great guy.
Great.
And very nice to me. He also kindly mentions the show every time.
Wonderful.
So, and Crowdsource the Truth. We talked briefly about who's mailing these suspicious packages. But we might I hate to help CNN, but they're so far down in the toilet in their ratings that, and I'm feeling in a generous mood, we can bring this back up.
Well, maybe they bombed themselves to bring the ratings up.
I certainly hope not. And, here's this package that Wasserman Schultz's office was addressed to Eric Holder.
What do you mean, at Wasserman Schultz?
The package that arrived at Wasserman Schultz's office was actually addressed to Eric Holder. It suggests to me that this is a complete wind-up.
Yeah.
They sent one apparently to John Brennan, basically perceived enemies or opponents of the Trump regime, administration, all got these packages, and that gives the organs of state, the globalist elite media, the ability to try to manufacture outrage and say, this is what happens, it's Donald Trump's fault and the Trump team's fault, and
I saw this earlier. I thought it had to be a joke, but this is saying that there was, in fact, a return address on it.
That's right. Catch me if you can. I'm going to make it easy for you. I know you guys have been having trouble with the Tsarnaev brothers, but so I'm just going to put, here's where I am. I sent this over here.
Yeah, and obviously that's not the correct address.
Yeah. But.
Well, although, Debbie Wasserman Schultz's office was stupid enough to make a threatening phone call to Jared and Elizabeth Beck with a voice masking digital piece of equipment, but they forgot to turn off the caller ID.
Just lightweights.
It's incredibly stupid.
But, and again, both Jason and I are very much interested in settling differences through debate and discourse, never through violence, and so we don't like to see this kind of behavior. But
did they determine if they were real bombs? I know they had the bomb. I was contemplating going over there, but from within the first few seconds of hearing about it, it sounded so absurd, and also me trying to run around and cover breaking news makes no sense. It's much better for us to gather the information and then make some commentary on it.
I agree. Yeah, there was talk, the people on Free Republic who are very good at this, www.freerepublic.com, and a lot of people who know perhaps too much about how bombs are made and how you should look at this stuff. We're having very detailed commentary. They had pictures of these things, and they were saying, here you see this thing has 2 wires. It's more dangerous if it has 2 wires. It should have only 1, and the size of this was wrong, and the size. So it looked very amateurish to the people who were commenting immediately on the incident. Over the next 24, 48, 72 hours, we should learn a lot more about this. Interesting so far that nobody has claimed responsibility for this yet, at least as of the last time I was able to check.
Thrown right in jail for that.
Well, remember, the Antifa people came right out with a letter saying, with the 123 East 83rd Street. So, but people may not have been into this kind of news back in 2008, I think it was, when Barack Obama said, echoing Sean Connery, that you don't bring a knife to a gunfight, and was using incendiary language into the 2008 campaign, I think the 2012 campaign, maybe the 2016 campaign. And Hillary Clinton as recently last week was saying, forget about this. We can't be civil to people we disagree with. We're only going to be civil once we win again.
Yes, if anybody incited violence, it was them. I mean, Trump makes fun of people, but there's a big difference between insulting somebody and threatening them.
Well, what about Eric Holder saying, when we
kick them?
Yeah, when they go low, we kick them, or whatever he said.
He's an idiot.
Yeah, he's an esteemed graduate of Columbia Law School, honored there for his service, having been, what was he? He had a House vote against him. He was held in contempt of the House of Representatives when he was Attorney General.
And then he was proud of that.
Yeah,
right?
one of his high honors was being held in contempt. And this is somebody who thinks that he should be President of the United States, maybe.
No. I have a feeling once Michael Moore's book comes out, well, sorry, I better not say anything he hasn't revealed about the book yet.
All right. So if we can get back into, yeah. So on Obama, and I don't really like to pick on him that much, but
that's not true.
No, I don't pick on him, but I mean that much. I mean, I criticize him. It's the difference between making fun of him for the way he talks or dresses or whatever. But for Barack Obama to have the nerve to call Trump a tin pot dictator, when under his watch, the president's watch, people spied on Cheryl Atkinson, they spied on James Rosen and his parents. They were, I would argue, the most aggressively negative towards journalists and the Fourth Estate. The list of scandals is too long to go over and well known to those who watch the show, but we could talk about Fast and Furious, we could talk about Benghazi, we could talk about the Tea Party targeting by the IRS. And then we could also talk about the flip side of the coin, where friends of the Obama administration, friends of the Clintons, skated, perpetrating crimes that are that really deserve to be, and I hope will be, investigated and prosecuted. And then to turn around and say that this economic rebound that we're experiencing at 4.1 to 4.2% growth is all because of him, in a speech where he's constantly saying, I, me, in a room that was manufactured to make it look like it was crowded when it wasn't. Apparently a partition was put into the room, and it was filmed from a certain angle to make it seem as if this was a rousing crowd when it was only like 2,000 people. So, I mean, I don't know if people remember the character Urkel.
Yeah.
But I mean, he's gone from being this orator, the seas will stop rising, global warming will end, peace on earth, to being Urkel, doing the Urkel dance. I mean, it's just, somebody needs to speak to both the Clintons and to President Obama and say, you really would benefit from counseling here, from people who've been around. Your stuff can get stale or worse. And, this notion of taking credit for a rebound that is caused by Donald Trump basically saying, everything that Barack Obama did, we're going to do the opposite of. And let's see if that helps the economy. Whoa, what do you know? That magic wand. You wave the wand and just tear up all the Obama regulations, the taxes, the Obamacare.
It's like George Costanza ordering tuna salad.
Exactly.
I forget the actor's name who played Urkel. That's bad.
Jaleel somebody or other.
Jaleel White. I worked with him on a film.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah, he's a nice guy.
Good. And then you have this one here, this Daily Caller story. This one up here. I would understand this if that title were read West Village. But, here's somebody campaigning in West Virginia. I don't know if it comes up or not.
Yeah, I just got a big ad thing I'm dealing. I don't know, suddenly the ad blocker is gone. I was doing a lot of stuff to try to overcome the streaming problem last night, and so this browser is a little bit sort of reset to a...
So I'd understand if this candidate were in the West Village, in Greenwich Village, but a West Virginia Democratic candidate was a pagan witchcraft cult leader.
Whoa.
I think that's not going to sit terribly well in West Virginia, I have a feeling. Didn't Obama and Hillary, didn't they say that West Virginia is where people cling to their guns and their Bibles?
Well, I was going to say, this person doesn't look like Hillary Clinton.
That's me. Come on, no body shame. No body shame.
Pagan witchcraft cult leader.
Yeah.
Got all these hat ads.
And this is 8,936 shares on Facebook. That's pretty good. I'm feeling this person is not going to be elected to the West Virginia House of Delegates, but I could be wrong.
Maybe no.
And then as for, we have a new department. We refer to the art department, and we've now just opened up a crack is whack department. And this is an actual tweet. I don't know if it's still up because it is so stupid, from Hillary Clinton. The elections 2 weeks from today are our chance to put a check on an administration that has undermined the rule of law. Now, does she think this is back in 93 to 2001 when
Right.
Bill was president? brought corruption into the Oval Office. You
Just
really
so
want to bring that up.
brazen. So brazen.
You know? You really want to bring that, and having let your husband run riot in Haiti, you know, stealing, being around a process that has maybe caused billions of dollars to dissipate. You're going to bring up attacking immigrants and vilifying journalists, you know, when they were viciously going after all kinds of journalists. You're really going to lead with this? I mean, you wake up in the morning and say, can you get me the biggest glass chin that I can put, you know, underneath my mouth so I can just go out and I'll tweet this out. I mean, people were talking about Trump, how, you know, whatever device he uses to tweet, that people should take that away. Somebody
Melania
seriously
said she does.
Well, all right, maybe Melania should take this
From Hillary.
Hillary Clinton tweet thing as well. And then do more than vote this year, volunteer the last weekend. That's just really, you know.
Yeah, she's like, if you're in Honduras,
That's right, yeah.
volunteer to rush the border.
Right, exactly. I mean, this is really wild. Here, we had Ted Malloch on as a guest. He's a good guy based in the UK now. And this is a story that just came out scant hours ago. It hasn't really been widely circulated yet, but it's pretty well written. And it makes the points that I think we've been talking about for a while, that the punditry and the establishment globalist press is gearing up to experience in 2018 what they experienced in 2016. Is it the Grucci Fireworks Company, I think, Grucci?
Yes.
They're going to have another bad year.
Wait a minute, that was something about the bomb. It said something about the suspicious bomb. We're a little all over the place because I think the ad blocker has been deactivated.
Oh, okay.
So it's advertising.
Sorry about that. Well, we can go back into the flow of it, into the slides.
See these little things that throw things off.
Yeah. So if we hit this, you know, people are patient and they say, Charles, we've been listening to you. This is 114th broadcast. Could you get the job done, please? You know, I'm trying. You know.
Yeah. They want
It's like that bed bug ad. You know, Roscoe, where's Roscoe? He's working. You know, we're working on it. We're trying, but it's, you know, it's a tough challenge to convince the swamp to investigate itself. Now,
Right.
we I think have put in place certain efforts that are about to culminate in some rough justice for those who would perpetrate charity fraud. But this is a, you know, standard article. You'll get many law firms and blogs like this writing about why fraud is so diabolically bad for public charities.
I might email this to Robert David Steele.
You should. You should. But fraud in a charity is the thing that once you admit it, you know, once you have to admit that there was fraud that took place under your watch, particularly of the magnitude that happened in the Clinton Foundation. And mind you, we have an appendix. I thought that I should put together some, and it's not even remotely close to all of the appearances I did from 2015 to 2016, early into 2017, January. There's 131 links at the back of this presentation of different stories I've done, that's up, you'll see at the end, and we'll scroll through it quickly. So the regulators, the real question here is not, is this a fraud? There's, you know, story after story, never countered. You know, the only counter that they attempt is, well, Charity Navigator gives it a 4-star rating. And then you go and you look at Charity Navigator and it's, you know, one guy with some animal crackers and a beanie, you know,
He's got an office next door to Snopes.
Exactly, right. So, yeah, 4 stars for Clinton, fantastic. You know, so, but this is really worth reading that article there in your copious idle time. So my suspicion here is that Donald Trump and his people have said, you know, we could do a lot of different things. We don't need to land on the Clinton Foundation and this fraud prior to the midterms. Let's get all of our energy into the midterms. Let's see how we do. And let's get everything ready so that we can move. And let's dare the people at the Clinton Foundation and the donors to it. Let's dare them to do another year where they hire crooked auditing firms and pay lawyers who should know better to write opinions that aren't worth anything, that give them, they think, some cover to allow them to file another set of fraudulent tax returns. Let's dare them to do that, dare them to be awful, and then we'll really find out what happens.
Yeah.
Speaking of Truman the Tiger. So if we go into this question of the lead-off question really posed in the title to this presentation, Now, I say Mueller's the wrong person to be the special counsel. Now, why would I say that? Okay. We've provided links to this in the past to people, so we don't really need to hit any of these links because most people have had them before. But to our new viewers, if you hit that William J. Clinton Foundation thing, you'll see it. 3-dump, 500 pages or so, documents demonstrating that this Clinton Foundation was investigated from 2001 to 2005. Mueller began to be head of the FBI September 4th, 2001, and stayed in that position through September 4th, 2013. So he was the guy on top of the Clinton Foundation when it spectacularly escalated its frauds. Took a local Little Rock fraud and made it a global mess. And there actually were open FBI investigations. In this link, you could find at least one memo where Mueller is personally briefed on the status of the investigation, either in 2002 or 2003. Comey is leading the investigation from 2001 to 2003, and then he's Mueller's boss from 2003 to 2005. And this dynamic duo can't get the job done in the William J. Clinton Foundation fraud, and you don't understand the back and forth in the jockeying in 2016 unless you are able to go into these details and see that Mueller and Comey and Rodenstein and the Clintons and eventually the Bushes and the Obamas had an enormous amount to fear if Donald Trump won. So they were obviously doing their level best to try to make sure that that didn't happen. He was also the FBI director as the Ranbaxy drug company, an Indian drug company, basically promoted the sale of its adulterated drugs to the Clinton Foundation. Those drugs were, in theory, purchased with monies donated by governments, but the sums that had been procured from the governments for these drugs were not, have never been validly accounted for. And this link, which I didn't hit it the right way, so it's red, not blue, but if you just punch the link into Google, there's a fantastic story in Fortune magazine, which we've talked about before. It's a bone-chilling story. It's very lengthy. And it gives you a sense of just how screwed up the vendor was, the principal vendor of HIV/AIDS drugs, to the Clinton Foundation beginning in 2004 or thereabouts.
Right, dirty medicine. We've spoken about this before.
Yeah. And so Mueller missed that one too. And this is a fraud that culminated, or a legal set of activities that culminated for Ranbaxy, and they're having to pay a $500 million set of penalties around May 2013. So the entire time when all this thing was playing out, Mueller was head of the FBI, but he didn't connect the dots back to the Clinton Foundation. He didn't ask, how is this presidential archive in Little Rock engaged in sourcing money to buy these adulterated HIV drugs and scatter them around the poorest countries in the world with no oversight? How did that happen? He was FBI director as the Clinton Foundation got into this crazy business. They call it Clinton Global Initiative. And I think this is, I don't like the Atlantic particularly, but if we hit the Atlantic link, I think that the author of this article got it 100% right. This is not charity. This article appears in the October 2007 issue. Mueller's the head of the FBI, and we're talking about a gigantic business development charity fraud in the center of a presidential campaign. And nobody at the FBI says, I should probably ask how it's lawful for Bill Clinton to make $6 million or so writing a book about his charity and get rich off his charity. I should probably check these mammoth travel expenses that don't seem to be justified or justifiable. And exactly how is he sourcing all this travel? Who's the vendor for all this travel? Does that remind you of Travelgate, what was going on in the White House? So, Mueller doesn't notice this or doesn't do anything about this. Let me go back into the slide. He's the FBI director when the Clintons and the Obamas team up to deceive the Senate and the American people concerning the true state of the Clinton Foundation. If we hit this zero hedge link here, that's a link to the Kamiki-Gibson memo dated right around the time of the election. And surprisingly, this only has 81 shares, this memo. It should have thousands of shares. But when you go into the memo, it's almost as bad as the banned memo. That comes up a little bit later, I think.
I wonder if there's some method of suppressing stuff that is just not obvious to us that's being, because like why 81? I mean, that seems crazy. I would think you put Clinton into something and in 2 years, how could it have only 81 shares?
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense. So Mueller missed this, right? He missed the
Maybe
fact.
he doesn't read Zero Hedge.
Well, yeah, I mean, the head of the FBI is a busy person, and there are obviously lots of plots against the United States, and it's a very important.
He's busy making them.
And it's very, very important work that so many in the line portion of the FBI actually do to protect us. But I mean, come on, he misses this, and then you go into the back end of the slide, and he missed this William Campbell, the informant on uranium-1. All that stuff happened beginning, I think, in 2006. Mueller's centrally involved. This one has 33.8 thousand shares. You see this one?
That makes more sense.
So Campbell's this informant. Mueller's head of the FBI. They still haven't cleaned this mess up. We still don't understand what happened with uranium-1, with the Juicer money coming down from Canada, from the Swedish money coming down into the United States and flowing around the world. We still don't have audits out of the Clinton Foundation that are done in compliance with the required guidelines. And here, Mueller's head of the FBI when all this is going on. So, bottom line, if we go back to the slide, if you want to figure out what really happened, the last person you want to put in charge of this Russiagate investigation and this potential corruption investigation in 2015-16 is the very guy who missed all of this stuff in the past. And as the Washington Post writes here, it's very friendly. Let's get it. Oh yeah, this is a different one. This is this Doug Band memo that there's a person in contact. I've spoken to both these people, Rosalind Helderman and Tom Hamburger.
Was this hacked? This came from WikiLeaks, this memo?
Yeah, I don't know if it was hacked.
What happened was all of my subscriptions are knocked out because of all the stuff that was going on last night. So we're going to maybe not be able to read this.
All right. Well, but this is a memo we've shown people before that written by Doug Band, supposedly, if we're to believe that it's a legitimate thing. And it
has anyone challenged the legitimacy?
Never been challenged. No portion of any WikiLeaks dump relating to the Clintons has been challenged. I don't think
anything they've put out has been
challenged. Yeah.
Well, it's been challenged by people like Kurt Eichenwald saying things like it's fake, but then when you say how is it fake, he says nothing.
Yeah, exactly. So if we continue on in the slides, if we need more arguments, here this is another CNN story. He was the FBI director when Bill and Hillary failed to explain how Bill was earning $17.6 million from Laureate, a for-profit entity in a joint venture relationship with the Clinton Foundation illegally, while she was Secretary of State. And for CNN, of course, any criticism of Bill Clinton is a conspiracy theory. This is black and white. The Clintons received $17.6 million between 2010 and 2015 for Bill's, quotes, service as a part-time chancellor of a for-profit university system called Laureate Education, or Laureate Universities. And they've never disclosed, these are what are called related party payments, they've never disclosed these payments properly in any of the Clinton Foundation tax forms, be they the main one, the Bill, Hillary, and Chelsea Clinton Foundation, or the Clinton Global Initiative that had tax forms for 2009 through 2013, or Clinton Health Access Initiative, because there's some relationships between Laureate and that, or the Clinton Family Foundation. None of these illegal, I would argue, taxable expenditures and enormous, none of these payments, private gains to Bill Clinton and to Hillary Clinton, none of these have been disclosed fairly on charity tax forms at state level, at federal level, at foreign level, and these material omissions are major league defects that must be corrected. So, and of course, Bob Mueller missed this too, while he was head of the FBI.
At what point does missing all of this become a very obvious indication of
why he was picked?
Right. We're past that point.
Yeah, exactly. And this, we have a link. You don't have to hit this one down here, but this is there's an ethics memo that the Department of Justice puts out, and at the bottom of it, it talks about you need to avoid the appearance of impropriety, which is a general concept, but it is laid out on that slide at the bottom. You try to avoid any actions. Let's further down. Right there. Right there. To avoid any actions creating the appearance that the employee is violating the law or the ethical standards set forth in this part. So,
but that's interesting language, because as long as you make it appear that you're not breaking the law, you're good.
But so here's Comey, who was Mueller's superior during 2001 to 2005. Here's Comey, who succeeds Mueller as FBI director. Here's Comey, who's a lion leaker, who screws up and gets fired. And so who gets hired to go in and examine all this? Bob Mueller. I mean, I can't think of a worse pick. I mean, Hillary Clinton maybe would be worse. Or Barack
That
Obama.
would have been funny. If
that would have been very funny.
But she doesn't have a law license.
She can't do that. Yeah. Barack Obama, I think, doesn't have one either.
Why do all these guys not have their law license?
I don't have one.
Yeah,
never had one.
You never went to law school.
I know.
You didn't get it. It's different, I think, when it gets revoked.
Yeah. Or you decide, you have a negotiation where you elect not to renew it, I think is what happened.
Right. All of this electing not to renew it, I think, is nice language for we're taking it away, but we'll allow you to say this.
Right. So if we go to the next page here, this is an interesting set of numbers, and please, the people who don't like numbers, I'm going to make this easy for you to see. But the most important thing to understand with the financial figures that appear in these tax forms and in the companion work product for various accounting firms, 2017 numbers that are due out by November 15th, 2018 cannot be correct if all the numbers that preceded, all the work that had been done in preceding years by various management teams and auditors, if that work is wrong, you can't just start and say, well, okay, forget about all that other stuff. We're just going to start in 2017. That part will be right. All the other stuff is wrong, and so, leave me alone. That's not the way it works. So I'm here to say categorically that the work done by notorious BAD, the tax work and what passes for, in quotes, audit work, that they did between 1998 or for the years 1998 through 2012 is categorically, boldly false, knowingly fraudulent, all fucked up math, to put it in very technical terms. And so you can't, balance sheets need to balance, income statements need to foot with the balance sheet and the cash flow statements. You got to produce cash flow statements. They haven't done it correctly. You've got to consolidate all of the subsidiaries over which you have control. You got to check to make sure that the damn thing is a charity in the first place and hasn't broken the law. All of this kind of work, they basically said, you know what, it is so screwed up, and here's the President of the United States and all these other important clients. We can't admit that it's a screw up, so we'll just put our name on it and hope that Hillary Clinton eventually becomes President of the United States and makes this all go away.
Charles, I think Eric Hansen, in his defense, deserves some credit because he didn't sedate the tiger before he took a selfie with him. I hate it when people do that.
Right, exactly. Exactly. But, let's just spend a little bit of time on this. So on the 2nd of November 2013, the Clinton family, it turns out, attempted to take control of the main Clinton Foundation, and by doing that, all the subsidiary Clinton, by changing the bylaws to create a two-class system, a Class A director, a Class B director, and then because that is boldly illegal, you cannot do that with a public charity. A family cannot control a public charity, which is what the Clinton Foundations are supposed to be. They say, we better not tell anybody about that, because if we do that, then we'll really get in trouble. So at least one regulator, I think the state of Georgia, managed to coax these bylaws out of the Clinton Foundation. Took time for them to get them, but they got them. But most of the other states didn't bother to get any of the bylaws. The IRS evidently didn't check to see any of this. And what this means is that this work that was done subsequently is all fine and dandy, interesting math, but the second you go and you say, all right, this public charity that's supposed to take care of all the papers of the Clinton presidency out there in Little Rock. Instead of doing that, we're just going to say that Bill, Hillary, and Chelsea Clinton can control this entity for the rest of their natural lives with no input from any other trustee. And they can make all the decisions at board meetings, and they can also, in between board meetings, they have iron-fisted control over what's supposed to be public charity. That is so far away from being what the required standard is, that if the IRS, even under Lois Lerner, who I guess had left by the 2nd of November 2013, even if Lois Lerner had been head of the IRS division that regulates charities, she would have seen at that time that this is a disaster. You killed the charity. And you've done this on the 2nd of November 2013. I think the reason they did that was that they were told by the New York Times and the other people who were maybe beginning to think about 2016, who would be the candidate, look, you better have an independent board. So to get that independent board, they probably went around to these people who said, well, I'll go on your board, but I don't want any risk. And so the Clintons said, I'll tell you what, we'll take all the risk. We'll own this thing. We're going to control this thing. We make all the decisions. You guys are just window dressing. And then they didn't bother to explain to these trustees, is my theory, that actually you can't do that. You know, so we haven't gotten into this before, and this is a little bit level of minutia. We'll try to keep it simple.
Steve Minutia.
Steve Minutia, yeah. There's 3 categories of net worth in a foundation. There's certain guidelines that you have to follow, accounting guidelines, to keep track of your net worth 3 different ways. So there's the net worth that is unrestricted. That means you can do basically whatever you want with that net worth.
That's Clinton's favorite thing to do.
Exactly. So that, and in truth, in the case of this Clinton Foundation, I would argue there is no unrestricted net worth. But when you look at these revenues and expenses for 2013, 14, 15, and 16, what you see is they actually managed to lose $25.5 million cumulatively in this unrestricted net worth. Now, when you spend more money than you have,
wow,
you have to take that, you have to cover off that $25.5 million loss somehow. You have to find assets to pay for these expenses that were greater than your revenues. So how did they do that? Where did they find the cash to do that? Evidently, they must have taken it from temporarily restricted assets or permanently restricted assets, and you're not allowed to do that. Temporarily restricted assets are puny. It's only $21.5 million cumulatively, as compared to a loss of 25 and total spending approaching $1 billion.
That's crazy,
right? So this is small beer, but this one here is where you go to prison for the rest of your lives. This is permanently restricted funds, or when Jason Goodman decides he wants to endow the Goodman University, and you sell Crowdsource the Truth for $45 trillion, and
I'll take it.
Yeah, and you give them like $2 trillion for Crowdsource the Truth or Goodman University, and you say that the founding charter of Goodman University, it has to be a university, has to comply with law, and you can't touch this money. It's permanently restricted. You can take the income and you can reinvest the income, but you cannot take the capital, and you better invest the capital prudently. You can't put it all on red. You can't go out to Las Vegas with the capital. You can't have to diversify.
So the endowment is literally, you want to set up a university, here's $1 billion, invest it, keep the principal $1 billion, and then just use the money you make from investing it, and that endowment keeps the organization strong.
That it helps to keep it strong, yeah. And that's, Harvard has an endowment, I think, that approaches $40 billion.
We heard from Larry Nichols yesterday that Bill Clinton is not very well endowed at all.
Easy. So, but when we look at this, this is a very disturbing picture. This is showing, in this period where the Clinton family illegally took control or tried to take control of the charity, they convinced PricewaterhouseCoopers, which is the PwC, in 2013, 14, and 15 to render audits, to take money from the trustees to render financial audits that are all wrong because they rest on the horrible work of notorious BAD, which has not yet been corrected or rescinded. So
why would PricewaterhouseCoopers agree to do that? They're one of the biggest accounting firms there is.
Well, remember, Pricewaterhouse has had some black eyes of late. They're the ones who...
Screwing up the Oscars seems like minor.
They've had a lot of black eyes. The problem is with these big firms is that once you... There should be more accounting firms, frankly. And once you get so big that you're doing all this work around the world. You get cavalier about making mistakes. And I believe that the mistakes made here by BKD are so severe that the firm itself, certainly the Little Rock office of BKD needs to go out of business. The management needs to be replaced. And in particular, we brought up this Eric Hansen fellow who was Chief Operating Officer of BKD and also chairman both of the American Institute for Certified Public Accountants and the international version. These are like the higher level bodies that are try to make sure that all accounting firms, they're the rule makers, they're the policemen of the accounting profession.
I think that's where the crooked guys go right too, because if you could be in charge of the rule maker, you make all the rules,
make those
just
tickets.
don't prosecute me.
Yeah, exactly. You get those little tickets, make those tickets. But I'm saying, on one hand, I have Gilbert Gottfried. So another issue here, of course, is that, and we don't need to hit this link, but if you hit this link eventually, and you remember to look up the Wedge Foundation, W-E-D-G-E Foundation, and you look up the Christine and Roy Sturgis Foundation, S-T-U-R-G-I-S, you will see prior to 2012 millions and millions of dollars that have been sent to the Clinton Foundation for an endowment, but by year-end 2012, all they claim is having $250,000.
Yeah.
And when you take money as a trustee for a foundation, you have an accounting firm looking at the books, and somebody gives you, Deputy Prime Minister of Lebanon gives you close to $1 million for an endowment, and there's nothing in the books for that endowment, and the Sturgis Foundation gives you like $4 million, and there's nothing, that's missing. And then other people, during 2004 especially, gave money for an endowment so the National Archives and Records Administration could receive the endowment they claim they received. You don't account for any of that, you are breaking all kinds of laws doing that. You're breaking state law, federal law, foreign law, and you're calling into question whether anybody associated with this process should ever be allowed to sit in a position of responsibility having to do with charity. When you abuse your responsibilities as a trustee in a charity with having to do with an endowment, especially when you do so as a lawyer. You think about Bruce Lindsay's the CEO, is a lawyer. Hillary and Bill Clinton were both, in theory, lawyers. And there are other people around us who are lawyers. You do this, and ordinarily you do get run out of town, and you never can practice law again, and it ends up being a world of hurt for you. So
Bruce Lindsay came up in the conversation with Larry Nichols yesterday. So it's interesting to see these people who were around Bill Clinton in the 80s when he was the governor, driving around town doing cocaine and sexually assaulting women, forcing the state troopers to assist him. These people who were helping him cover that then are now the big names in your presentations who have been with them for 30 years.
They've graduated. And then for the numbers types, we'll just stay on this for a second, how is it that the unrestricted funds get allocated all the expenses? See that? Whereas the permanently restricted endowment, evidently they can take in $58.8 million in 2013 for that, and they don't have to pay for anything. They don't have to pay for a bookkeeper, they don't have to pay for a manager, they don't have to pay for lawyers, nothing. All revenue, no expenses. Next year, $92 million of revenue, only $500,000 of expenses. It certainly looks, just a high level look at this, I would say these numbers are cooked. They have not been allocated properly. And a lot of questions need to be asked about who was spending almost $1 billion and
on what?
On what, and why are we so certain that the Clinton Foundation could do anything it wants to do, that all of its stuff is unrestricted? I don't read the legal agreements I've seen and the laws and statutes that pertain to this, giving them this kind of latitude to do whatever they want to do, and now we're going to show you why in the next page.
Okay.
So we've done some of this before, but this is an excerpt from Bedrock, IRS Opinion, 1985. Read this.
It's written by Fred Flintstone.
Exactly. Read this at your leisure. But what you'll see is that in order for a charity to actually be a validly constructed charity, it has to be, in this case, an actual nonprofit corporation, which means under Arkansas law, for most of them, you have to at all times have 3 directors. You can't say, over the weekend, one of my directors died, and I'm doing it. No, you have to always have, there has to be a continuous chain where you always have a minimum of 3 directors. And the reason for that is once you get below 3, it's not a separate entity anymore. It's probably a joint venture or a partnership or whatever. It's not an independent organization, and only independent organizations are worthy of getting federal and state and foreign tax exemption. So that's really important. You should, especially lawyers and people around this, you owe a duty, multiple duties as trustees to protect the integrity of this nonprofit corporation. And how tough is it to say, you know what, I go, I'm into the garbage bin, the ash heap of history, if I have, for any reason, fewer than 3 directors. This is a very complicated thing. Why don't I have 10? That way there's like no risk of it. And why don't they, instead of them all being related either to Clinton or, all beholden to the Clintons, all people who would never talk, say anything negative to the Clintons, instead of doing that, you have this thing that is basically just part of the Clinton family. It's just so boldly in violation of the law. And Stuart Dean pointed this out very well in the memo that he wrote back in, I think, August of 2017. Not only is this thing not a charity, in his opinion and in my opinion, I don't even think it's a corporation. I don't think that they have gone through the basic requirements to be an actual corporation.
Why do you think that?
Because they didn't file a tax return in 1997. They didn't get audits that are done in accordance with U.S. law for years 1998 to 2004. There are 40 different exhibits pointing out the mistake they've made. And they still haven't corrected their financial filings. They haven't gotten a valid audit in any period in which they've existed. And they haven't filed the required paperwork in every state and foreign country where they existed. And they haven't kept track of their money. And there's billions of dollars missing.
What did they spend $1 billion on?
Well, campaigns are expensive. Fancy living's expensive. All this travel around the world. I suspect this has been used as a gigantic slush fund, not simply for Democrats, but for foreign leaders who have trouble funding their campaigns. And maybe even by our security services for covert operations. It's just a big slush fund, in my opinion. Gigantic slush fund.
Things like overthrowing Libya.
Things like that, yeah.
Sidney Blumenthal was
setting
involved.
up ISIS.
Oh, you know what I also discovered was Sidney Blumenthal was writing articles for I should check the publication, but what is he? Is he a journalist or a warmonger or an author or all of the above?
He's a fixer. I think he's just a fixer, basically.
He's just in there doing whatever he wants.
But here, we've talked about Simpson Thatcher in the past, and if you hit this WikiLeaks link, and we go to the search function, and if we, search terms throughout whole of email. If you just put in here, BJORKLUND. Let's see how many hits we get for that. Okay. And you'll see there's this is Simpson Thatcher Bartlett Law. This is a tremendous amount of information in here that is incredibly, in my mind, incriminating. There's a lot of memos about the governance memorandum, the status of the foundation.
Why has Donald Trump not pardoned Julian Assange? He was using WikiLeaks in his campaign, reading these emails.
I don't know. But this is a tale here that really every single one of these emails and attachments needs to be gone over by professional investigators. Because what this trail shows me is that Simpson Thatcher had to know. Victoria Bjorklund was the leading, there you go, you hit attachments. And this is there are various versions of this. It should, if you hit that, It's, they had to know that this thing was a complete fraud by latest. No, this is a later draft of the review. There are earlier drafts. There's one December 3rd, 2011 that's particularly important. But they had to know, Simpson Thatcher, the world's experts on charity, this Victoria Bjorklund. This was so far away from being compliant with the law. And yet, while Simpson Thatcher was doing work, and maybe their work was circumscribed, they allowed the Clinton Foundation to file all these false and materially misleading financial statements and audits, multiple jurisdictions, the IRS, multiple states, multiple foreign governments. And there comes a point when you're a law firm when you're an expert and you're shown something, and you should have looked at this and said, "This is a fraud." I mean, it's a complete fraud. You don't say, "Well, for another $100,000, we'll write you a fancy report saying, you're fine. Don't worry about it." You actually have a responsibility at a certain point to go into your client and say, "Listen, we're resigning the account, and the reason we're doing that is we have to go. It's our duty. We're officers of the bar. We have to go." And this is absolutely criminal behavior. We have to report you.
I think we're learning that it's a little bit naive to presume that just because someone's a lawyer, they're going to adhere to the law.
Well, but this is really, and this is shameful. I mean, this is why I've been spending this much time on it, because we have to lay a marker down. The people, now suddenly the Eric Holders and the Hillary Clintons and others are all for civility all of a sudden when these fake bombs are coming.
Oh, right, where they were calling for violence just a while ago.
So maybe they could join the call for bringing charity laws and reporting back where it should be into the 21st century, and punishing people who have led this gigantic fraud, including the lawyers and Hillary Clinton and Chelsea and Bill and many others. They can't claim ignorance here. This is boldly the largest set of unprosecuted frauds ever attempted in history. And here you have this white shoe law firm. Full disclosure, I worked when I was 18 years old for 3 months at Simpson Thacher, and I know many people who are still there, or a number of people who are still there. I have the utmost admiration for those I do know. But this charity department of the Simpson Thacher is a disaster.
Have you called anybody recently that you know over there to be like, "Hey, by the way, WTF"?
I haven't.
Maybe you should.
Well, I'll leave the question answered that way.
Okay.
That doesn't mean it didn't happen. So if we then go to the next page, and we ask ourselves, how in the hell, this is Cohn Resnick, a firm that I think has some issues, and I sincerely hope for their sake they are not working right now on the 2017 audit, because they're walking into a buzzsaw if they are. But in the most recent one, they have this footnote 7 where they claim that the Clinton Foundation Endowment Fund had $133 million in it. $133 million. And it says that the income of the endowment fund is unrestricted as to purpose. Well, that may be what the trustees are telling them, but that's just not what the law says. You can't do that. The purposes of the Clinton Foundation are laid out in its articles of incorporation as far as the IRS is concerned. The IRS doesn't know about these changes. They're relying on what the Clinton Foundation told them back in December 23rd, 1998 through January 29th, December 23rd, 97 to January 29th, 1998. They're relying on what they were told then about the purposes of the foundation, and these purposes are spelled out. The purposes are establishing, operating, protecting, or improving the Presidential Archival Depository and of undertaking and supporting related research and educational activities. I put in here in Little Rock, Arkansas in parentheses because the actual application makes that plain, goes beyond what's in the Articles of Incorporation. It says, look, we're basically just going to do work in Little Rock, Arkansas. So that's all you can do. You can't go and then say, well, I'm going to get this gigantic slush fund here of $182 million that will allow me to do whatever the hell I want to do with it. I mean, that's the solicitation of this money for the endowment, I would argue, was all illegal. Every request was illegal. Every use of the mail was illegal. Every phone call, every wire transfer, every check, every meeting, every expense, trying to raise the money, all boldly illegal.
Charles, the question that I have, will you ever have an opportunity to testify before Congress or in court about all this? Because that will be epic.
Well, we'll see. I wouldn't mind. You have to read the language carefully, but when you go into it and you read this language carefully, there's a lot of weasel language, paragraphs, sentences that go on and on and on and on. And I've put the important qualifying stuff in red. It says, the most important part is at the very end, which now I can't see.
Sorry.
Provided that such use be exclusively and irrevocably applied to the exempt purposes of the corporation. So it says you can do this and you can do that, but this important, provided that such use be exclusively and irrevocably applied to the exempt purposes of the corporation, which are establishing, operating, protecting, or improving the Presidential Archival Depository and undertaking and supporting related research and educational activities in Little Rock, not in San Francisco, not in Aspen, not in Chicago, not in New York, not in Harlem, not in Boston, not in London, not in Stockholm, not in Canada. In none of those places is any of this work authorized. And think of the number of people that various Clintons have lied to about this. Think of the number of regulators who say, well, God, it's such a mess. Maybe if we let it go, it won't get bigger. And then it gets bigger and bigger, and this becomes the charity that ate the whole not-for-profit sector in the world. I mean, so many people, Bill Gates, the Rockefellers, the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, so many governments have either been in on this fraud, including possibly our federal government and certain states, or have been willingly duped by this fraud. They've looked at this and they said, you know what? Overall, the American governments, all of them together, spend $6 trillion a year. We know we have crooked people in the Clintons. If Hillary gets to be president, we can use this as leverage over her, because we will be able to nail them if they go too far, because we have them for committing fraud, which is not really thinking clearly. Because had Hillary Clinton become president of the United States, all of these records would have disappeared. We might have disappeared. Many challengers to the Clintons would have disappeared. Right. And so this has now become a record that is so egregiously abhorrent that it has to be shared widely with the public, which is why we've been doing that day in and day out, week in and week out, month in and month out. And fortunately, I can report that a significant number of people with prosecutorial discretion are watching these presentations with rapt attention.
Nice.
And I think that, I can't predict when, but I think this long, sordid episode is coming to an end. And I hope that, unless the Clintons get down the way the followers of the Prophet Muhammad do, on the handed knee, bending down and apologizing and coming forth with all their records, and saying, oh, it was a big mistake. I went on a 21-year bender and I didn't know about all this stuff. I'm sorry. Here's all my money back. I'm going to go back to Hope, Arkansas, and I'm going to work in the local huddle house and volunteer at the Salvation Army. I mean, even that wouldn't cause me to say, all right, no, it's like, Huskow, man, Huskow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to imagine, though. I mean, the concept of a former president and a former Secretary of State and senator actually being criminally prosecuted and incarcerated, it's never happened.
So
it would be
first for
awesome. It would be really awesome. We would have to have a party. We would really have to have a big event.
Well, I think it should be part, if something like that were to happen, it should be part of a sweeping reform of the not-for-profit sector. I think it's not simply to punish the Clintons. You'd have to go after the Harvards and the Columbias and the Yales and
you got to start with the Clintons.
No, but all the other people as well, and say, listen, you guys, Harvard University, you regularly go around, saying you're the best, the brightest, and all this kind of stuff, and yet you allowed your name to be used centrally in this fraud for almost 20 years. Okay, don't tell me there's nobody at Harvard smart enough to understand charity law. You're a freaking charity.
You're Harvard.
You're Harvard, right? You're the H-dog. You're the big one. What about you, Yale? What about you, Columbia? You'd have to go after these big foundations that are fond of bragging about all the great works they do around the world and say, how come nobody checked to see whether this thing actually was indeed a foundation? Bill Gates, you're a smart dude. More than 100 separate grants to these frauds, over $150 million, and nobody in your organization stopped to think, well, this guy Ortel contacted me specifically by email, and I saved my emails, Bill. Okay, back in 2015-16 timeframe, and notified us that these were taxable expenditures. Somebody senior from the Gates Foundation traveled to Washington, D.C. to meet with an unnamed journalist, and they haven't corrected this. And I've got to believe if they do this kind of a screw up with the Clinton Foundation, if I were to spend the time looking at other places where the Gates Foundation has given lots of money, as a guess, we'd find other problems. To pick one in particular, the Public Health Corporation of India in 2006. How did they manage to send $15 million to Rajat Gupta, the now disgraced disgraced an actual felon who used to run McKinsey? How did they send $15 million to the Public Health Corporation of India at an address in Stamford, Connecticut?
Have you ever turned on Windows?
Yeah. So, big problems here in the endowment land, big problems. And so if we keep going to the next page,
oh, yes, the email investigation.
yeah, so going back to our man Bob Mueller. So here's Mueller, he's the head of the FBI. You would hope that he's the guy, you know, who he has the highest need to know. He probably should know almost everything. Maybe there's a level above the FBI director where certain
you mean
people,
in terms of secret operations?
secret operations, criminal issues.
Investigations.
How did Bob Mueller stay in his seat as head of the FBI starting January 21st, 2009, when Hillary Clinton and her team of wombats decided that, you know, they were going to transact?
I thought he didn't get into the FBI until
2001. Mueller.
Right, 2001.
How did Mueller on January 21st, 2009 say, oh yeah, this is fine. Hillary Clinton, her team, Ben Rhodes, this guy who couldn't get a security clearance during transition, we'll put him on the deputy on the National Security Council.
Is he related to Cecil Rhodes?
No, I doubt it. I don't think so, but maybe. How do we let Ben do that? How do we let Uma Abedin anywhere near national security matters? How do we let Hillary Clinton and all her people transact all of their work on unsecure servers and devices, and the head of the FBI and their team either noticed it, you know, and was on top of all these crooked deals that ultimately were put together by Team Clinton and Clinton Inc., or didn't even know about it? And, you know, so you're sitting there saying, well, I've got a special counsel spot that maybe I shouldn't have opened up, but I opened it up. I know, I'll get the guy who allowed Hillary Clinton to transact this type of crooked business for, you know, 4 years in this manner, which put our nation's highest level secrets, international secrets, at risk for 4 years. And then to top it off, you know, the guy said, you know what? After February 1st, 2013, when Hillary doesn't fill out the form you're supposed to fill out saying, you know, I recognize I have responsibilities on this classified information, I'll just let her keep all that stuff. You know, and if she wants to give the stuff back, she can give some of it back. She can bleach pit what she doesn't want. She can destroy things that are under subpoena. And this guy, all the while, Bob Mueller is head of the FBI. Well, all this crap is going on. And now comes a time where Congress is asking tough questions. People are asking tough questions. There's a new president asking tough questions. You and I are asking tough questions. And instead of, you know, getting to the bottom of all these tough questions, you say, no, I'll put the guy who has the most to lose if these questions get answered. I'll put him in a place where he can harass Donald Trump and he can harass
anybody asking.
Anybody asking these questions. So, and how did Dopey James Leak and Liar Comey allow, once the Inspector General of the the Intelligence Committee, I guess, under some
ODNI, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence?
Yeah, I forget what it is. It's not the DNI. There was a special statute which triggered an FBI investigation on the 6th of July, 2015, forcing a formal, real FBI investigation into mishandling. Okay, we have the links there to. That's a different. We have up here. We have the links to that investigation. 26 dumps now. This one here.
You want to see it?
We don't have to, or we're going to, whatever. So how in the hell does Leak and Liar Comey say, all right, Loretta, that's fine. You know, that's fine. I'll tell you what, you can call it a matter. I mean, it's a matter. There's a big difference between a matter and an investigation.
Well, there's two types of matter, Charles.
Well, it don't matter.
And it doesn't matter.
Right, yeah, exactly. But, I mean, how did Comey allow this? And then why did Mueller, from 2001 to 5 actively, and then 2005 to 2013 while he was still at the FBI, and then Comey, September 4th, 2013. Why did both of these FBI directors allow supposed investigations in the Clinton Foundation to just sort of walk in place, not really happen, but just sort of be maybe there? I mean, nobody did anything about it. I mean, there has to be a way for the white hats who do exist to go back into this mess and say, here are the real records. How many records have been, you know, sent over here to the, you know, where the sun don't shine place, where we put incriminating stuff we don't want the public to see? Let's take them out. Let's look at the full deck of records. Let's see who's been in charge, you know, not explaining the truth about the Clinton Foundation. How many people in the FBI and elsewhere have been compromised by allowing this gigantic set of international frauds to metastasize and infect the entire not-for-profit industry of the world? How many people have been in charge of that? And how many of those people can be removed or should be removed? And how do we get to a place where people understand there are severe penalties for doing this kind of stuff so they don't do it?
I wonder how many people are brought into it against their will, kind of coerced or forced to be involved, and then when they say, hey, but by the way, this is a problem, they're like, yeah, it would look really bad on your performance review if I, as the director, wrote in that you've been involved in this for 2 years. Shut up.
Right, exactly. And this, I don't know if you've seen this, you might hit this Thompson timeline. This is an exhaustive document here.
Which one is that? Okay.
And it's kind of amazing, actually. It's private people put it together, and it goes on and on and on. There's short entries, medium entries, long entries. If you hit the Clinton Foundation timeline here, I mean, it just goes on and on and on. Stories and articles and this and that. And this is not done by the FBI. This is done by private citizens who care about, charities. And so it's not as if the FBI has to do a lot of work here. I mean, you did some work. The first thing is, let's see what you did. Then go read the Thompson timeline. Then watch Sunday with Charles and Closing In, and watch some of these other appearances. And boil it down to whatever is the easiest case to win. And let's start playing indictment and conviction bingo here. Let's get the job done.
Why would Bill Clinton sign this executive order prohibiting a federal government official from using public office for private gain? Is there something in there?
There's probably a waiver or agreement.
Is there something in there that he's written that he's taken advantage of?
Again, I don't know, because I don't have any kind of security clearance, nor do I want it. But as a guess, the way these people operate is there are variance agreements, there are riders, there are related things, and when I was doing deals in the deal day, you have these bound volumes. Every deal, you have to take every relevant document. You would then put it in and get it formally bound. Oftentimes these are gigantic documents, this wide, Jason.
Wow.
And in some deals, you might have 10 of those for one deal. And so those are your master documents, and you can't unbind them. And so you can always look at what the deal is. And oftentimes, and you don't close unless you have all the documents ready. So, but with these Clintons, and Obamas, and maybe the Bushes, I don't think that's how they roll. So we don't really yet know what the agreements are that operate here. But I can tell you a lot of work has been done here. And there's a lot in this particular timeline, there are a lot of stories talking about how leaks suggest that Loretta Lynch and the Obama administration didn't want the investigations to proceed that were authorized into the Clinton Foundation. So there's got to be records of that. And in addition, there have got to be people either out of the FBI now or willing to come forward and be whistleblowers who can from the inside say, yeah, this has been an unbelievable fraud for a long period of time. We're sick and tired of it. We haven't been able to tell a real tale. But now we see that Donald Trump is serious. We see he's reforming the Justice Department. We see he's reforming the Supreme Court. Let's let this thing see the light of day, and let's expose what really happened here. And I should mention that Peter Schweitzer has lent enormous visibility to many of these issues with his book Clinton Cash that came out, I think, in May.
He's got a new movie coming out that I just saw.
Oh, sorry? But we don't have enough time to go through all these stories. But at your leisure, people who want to say, there are no details here. There's nothing to look at. Knock yourselves out. When you go through just this one timeline, you don't have to look at the Clinton email timeline. Just look at the Clinton Foundation Thompson timeline. Watch 114 episodes, or even just 10 episodes of Sunday with Charles and Closing In, and you'll understand that this is a gross miscarriage of justice, abandonment of justice. And why did Comey exonerate the gigantic Clinton charity frauds, but then stomp on Corinne Brown for an $800,000 charity fraud? You got $3 billion at the Clinton Foundation, $800,000. I mean, and Corinne,
she must have upset somebody.
I guess she cheesed somebody off. But she's African American, 71 or 2 at this point. I'd have a hard time explaining that, particularly saying as the Clintons, we're championing the interests of, or Obamas, we're championing the interests of African Americans.
Charles, somebody in the comments said enough about the Clintons already, and I'm thinking, if you're coming to this show not wanting to hear about the Clintons, why don't you go to McDonald's and order a salad?
Right.
It's like, what the hell are you doing here?
Why don't you go to the Donna Shalala event down in Miami with Hillary Clinton? Oh, that's going well.
Oh, when is that?
I think there has been one, I think as recently as today or yesterday.
Oh, I would love to go there with Scott Bennett.
So there'll be more rallies between now and the election.
Yeah, but her like son or nephew or grandson or something was sort of forced on Scott as his lawyer and like basically sold him down the river to 4 years of jail.
Not good.
No.
So what are these internal records that the FBI show concerning how Crossfire, if you hit this link, how Crossfire Hurricane, which is the effort in theory under Comey to investigate possible interference in the 2015-16, like, how did this thing come together? What records exist inside the FBI of, the real genesis for Crossfire Hurricane? What official documents are there? We know the FBI, when they finish investigations, they do release some records into the public domain. And in the FBI vault, wonderful people there have been helpful. If there are records that you could reveal to us on what was really going on, that triggered the creation of this Crossfire Hurricane effort. Who were the people who were put on the team? How much information did the FBI put together? Who was overseeing the funding for this? Was this narrowly only looking at Trump? Did it look at Democrats? Did it only look at the 2015 cycle and in so doing not discern just how unusual this was? Which similar sorts of things happened in 2011, 12, 2007, 8, 2003 and 4, and 1999 and 2000. And so was there proper context for Crossfire Hurricane? And why was it? I mean, if you start the thing officially, I believe around July 31, 2016, you're almost a year into it when Comey's fired May 9th and when Mueller's hired May 17th. Why'd you need to hire Mueller? You have an investigation, it should be pretty far along. It's not like Comey was deciding everything going on with this Crossfire Hurricane. There are other people working on this. And so why'd you need to set up the special counsel? And, in the first place, and was that a legitimate thing? Did you legitimately set it up? And chances are, ixnay.
I just got a great idea. We should take the faces of every idiot involved in this story and put them standing next to Truman the Tiger. That's sort of like the guilt box.
That's right. And then, how is it possible, if we look here, remember that appearance of impropriety, this Washington Post article, which maybe will screw up your screen here, Brothers in Arms, the long friendship between Mueller and Comey.
Ooh.
I mean, this is in the Washington Post, paper of McRecord here.
When is that? May 17th when?
2017.
Oh, yeah. Oh, May 2017, is that what it's saying? That's strange that it doesn't have the year.
Yeah, if you go...
this is all talking about 2017. Yeah, James Comey is super tall, huh?
He is. They're long-standing friends. How is it that, you have...
Look how red his nose looks in that picture.
Yeah, I mean, Comey wasn't asked to leave because he did such a great job. He was towering over the entire staff and setting an example that nobody else could follow. No, he was fired because he was a lying leaker and incompetent. And, the last person you would put in place to do a real investigation of what truly happened, other than Hillary Clinton, is Bob Mueller, who was a close friend of James Comey over many, many years and has a lot to lose if the Fourth Estate decides that it's a good thing to go back to base principles and perform investigative journalism.
Fourth Estate has been bought and paid for. It's the Fifth Estate. What do we know about how James Comey and Ben Wittes became friends?
Oh, I don't know.
It's an interesting friendship, isn't it?
It sure is. I wonder if...
Brookings Institute, Lawfare blog.
Right. Yeah. So I don't understand. I don't see how this makes any kind of sense. And I think the ethicists, the people who spend their time and have legitimate credentials, if there are any clean ethicists left in Washington, D.C., looking at this, have a lot of explaining to do. I don't think you can explain this Mueller and his selection.
Sure you can. We wanted to continue covering it up.
And you don't need to hit this link, this next one, because we did a previous episode on the special counsel law. There it is, the Code of Federal Regulations, the actual text. I don't see, if you have a mature crossfire hurricane investigation in process and staffed, and in theory making progress, I don't see the firing of James Comey as reason for a new special counsel. I don't see that. But on the other hand, with these reeking messes all over the place, I definitely see the need for a replacement of the Attorney General, a replacement of the Deputy Attorney General, a replacement of the head of the FBI. And with that all done, and house cleaning, the question would be, if the house cleaning is severe enough, if the indictments flow, if people who've been obstructing justice for a long time are prosecuted, maybe we don't need a special counsel. But I think this Mueller situation is beyond dirty. It really is. And the American people are in part going to vote on the 6th over their revulsion. The Democrats will say, they're revolted by Donald Trump and they want, him impeached, et cetera. And we'll see who wins. On balance, I don't think it's going to be the loony liberals.
We've had the American Revolution, now we'll have the American Revulsion.
Exactly. And then, this is an interesting thing. This is just
what is that?
A note from the IRS. Tell the IRS about suspected tax-exempt status abuses. And I would encourage people in the Crowdsource the Truth community. You should do that.
Oh yeah. I know somebody who I could tell them about.
Yeah. They're actually literally asking to do this.
Don't you get some money when they recover the money from whoever it is that's abusing?
I don't know exactly how it works. But I mean, we're doing this as a service to encourage people. It seems that the IRS is taking its sweet time.
So to make a referral, meaning click this and then you're going to fill out a form about somebody who's complaint. Wow, I didn't know about this. That's a handy form for people who are abusing 501c3 tax-exempt corporations. And maybe if those people admit it in court filings, I could include that with this.
Yeah, you could. You could. And there's, I believe, similar forms for states as well.
IRS loves evidence.
Right. So if we go back into the slide, we also have the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, as it turns out. They're one of the principal regulators of charities. Of course, Marsha Blackburn, a brave congressperson, contacted them. They said, we're not going to do anything. But just 2 days ago, they have kickoff of the first annual International Charity Fraud Awareness Week.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, I know how to do that. I mean, this is International Charity Fraud Awareness Week. Exhibit A, the Clinton Foundation, and it's the largest set of unprosecuted charity frauds ever attempted, still ongoing.
I can't believe they didn't invite you to this and have a tiger costume ready.
It's just...
So what is this? Is
giving after natural disasters. Why
is this happening?
I don't know.
Donations count. Resource Center. I mean, is this like an event that you go to?
Yeah, I think so. A shindig. It's happening as we speak. Today's the 24th. It's this week.
Right. I mean, is it in D.C. or what? I'll have to figure this out. National Association of State
And you can even have a hashtag, Charity Fraud Out.
Oh boy, I can't believe I didn't know about this. See, this is why Closing In and Sunday with Charles are such important shows for everybody to watch and share.
And look at this. They're doing, with the Charities Commission in England, the Clintons have been defrauding England and Australia and Northern Ireland, New Zealand, Scotland, So this guy, Joe Simons, the FTC chairman, the Crowdsource the Truth community needs to start tweeting out, hey, Joe, in view that this is International Charity Fraud Awareness Week, how many of the Sunday with Charles episodes have you seen? How many of the Closing In episodes?
What's the guy's name?
Joe Simons, FTC, SIMONS. Hey, Joe.
Yeah, he's on Twitter.
Is he?
He is.
You got him up there?
Here he is.
Cool. Let's see.
Charles, he doesn't have nearly the Twitter following that you do.
Well, that will change, but let's definitely start tweeting at them. Let's get.
How does he get the check if he's got so few people following him?
I don't know. So I don't know his background, but let's get, Jason's followers, my followers. I'll follow the guy. And, just let's get our followers to start sending every single episode. And then, for good measure, if we go back into the slide, and we'll scroll through the next few pages just to give you a sense of what I did. This took me several hours. I just picked and did in chronological order examples of either stories that I feel are relevant in your understanding my concerns, or stories that have to do with the Clinton Foundation, and appearances, radio appearances, podcasting appearances, things on my site, interviews of me. This all predates my knowing you. This is just through right before the inauguration of Donald J. Trump. So when people say there's nothing in the public domain about, send every single one of these damn stories to Joe Simons and every single Crowdsource the Truth episode. Say, hey, Joe, when are you going to get it's International Fraud Awareness Week,
I was unaware.
Right? Look at this, it's 86 here, and go to the next one. This is another up to 98, and we keep going. This excludes a large number of international interviews that are in foreign languages, Lionel's podcasts I couldn't get, 131 examples.
Wow.
Okay, some of these things are an hour long, some of them are shorter, some of them are 5-10 pages, some of them are longer than that. So there's a lot of information out there, and then on top of that, this is just the amuse-bouche, in the meal. You go through that, and then if you go to the playlist, there we have, 114 times 228 hours, roughly, of broadcasting here, where we take you through week by week. We're now, look at that, we're up to 13,086 views just of the index.
On the playlist, yeah. So this is the unofficial Charles Ortelathon.
Exactly.
People can watch that, that movie, The Martian, where he's stuck on Mars. If only he had all these episodes.
Exactly.
He'd have something to do other than grow potatoes in his own poop.
We probably should send these episodes down to Corinne Brown so she can watch them in
something
jail.
to do in jail. He's probably watching CNN.
Yeah, Bernie Madoff, he's got nothing to do for the rest of his life. He'd probably get a huge chuckle out of this. Say, look, I'm in prison, for what I did, and these Clintons are getting away with it. And Chelsea's seriously talking about running for office?
That would be terrible. What happens if you just show up at jail and say, I want to talk to Corinne Brown?
I don't know. It's not the first thing I wake up in the morning thinking about doing.
I would like to interview her and understand.
You should. You know what? If you're going to do that, I don't know which prison she's in, but one person to interview definitely would be Bernie Madoff.
Yeah.
He's in North Carolina, I think. Buechner, North Carolina, from memory. Federal prison, rest of his life.
So I guess he's probably bored talking to him.
Let him watch this.
Give him a.
Hey Bernie, what do you think?
So Charles, is that the entire?
That is the entirety.
Okay.
And we're staring down. We have, rope-a-doped, I think, the Clintons into a corner here where they thought they were going to get through all this by the blue wave. And that's not going to happen, I don't think. Now they're flirting, I think, with violence or disruption, or being able to say when the coming red wave happens, this wasn't a legitimate election, the other side was intimidated by the pipe bombs, so we're going to challenge the results. And now Chelsea's running for office, Hillary may run for president, who knows, Bill may run for something.
What could he run for?
I don't know, just make something up, mayor of New York, so that it's, we can't go after the Clintons because that's political retribution, is what they're trying to say. But this November 15th, 2018 deadline coming up, today is the 24th, 3 weeks away. Okay, this is the mother of all hard deadlines. Under New York law, you cannot file a tax return past that deadline for 2017. And if you're watching this, Mr. Hansen, your partners at BKD, your colleagues at the AICPA, the international versions of that, how in the hell do you let any accounting firm rely on your awful work, the awful work of your colleagues, both filling out, in theory, tax returns and inventing these ridiculous supposed audits that Pricewaterhouse has relied upon, that the Cohn-Resnick is relied upon, the American public is relied upon, the auditors for the donors are all relying upon your horrible work. And you need to rescind that work, and you need to give the Clinton Foundation enough time to produce a real audit by November 15th, 2018. And every minute that passes where you don't do that or where you resist this process is a minute where you're compounding your own liability and likely putting your firm in a position where it's going to be the once inglorious and notorious BKD will become the no longer in business firm of BKD. And I would remind people who are not familiar with this process that BKD is an accounting firm which has gotten bigger and bigger and bigger by encouraging smaller accounting firms to merge into it. And the way they typically do that is they pay, in these type of deals from history, they don't just give you a stuffed animal, they give you a note, typically in some cash, and they say over the course of 3 years or 5 years, you'll get paid out, but you're fundamentally taking BKD credit risk. And if you're acquiring firms and not telling them that you've done this with the Clinton Foundation,
that's fraud.
That's fraud. That's how they roll. So this is why I say this November 15th, 2018 deadline is a very serious deadline, and you can't just walk in at 5:05 p.m. to New York and say, well, I need another week.
The tiger ate my homework.
Yeah, I need another week. You can't do that.
Charles, I think for next week, I may add another disclaimer that says that Mr. Ortel's comments and opinions in no way implicate Truman the Tiger.
Yeah, I've always been a stuffed animal fan, I have to say.
And people are telling me in the comments that they can't look at this picture now without thinking about Cory Booker. So it's good. It's good to know that we're making headway here.
That's right.
People say, when will things happen? It's happening right here. Well, Charles, with that, I will thank you for once again preparing an incredibly comprehensive yet completely new set of evidence and compelling information that hopefully people will dig into. I want to thank all the generous Patreon sponsors. There was a little technical problem last night with the live stream of More Pain, in which Michael went into further detail about the knowledge of both Barack Obama's administration and George W. Bush's administration. They knew that Osama bin Laden was being hidden in Iran, and we even went over articles from the Washington Post from 2001, from April, talking about a treaty between Saudi Arabia and Iran. So in the context of that, the notion that they would work together to hide bin Laden, I don't know what it means, but it's certainly compelling. So hopefully people will join patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth and take a look at that episode. We'll see everybody, you and I, together on Sunday. Tomorrow, of course, is Thursday, and join patreon.com to catch the intelligence assessment with Kevin Shipp tomorrow at 7 p.m. Eastern. I'll see everybody then. Thank you very much, Charles. Have a great night.
Thank you.